Good morning and welcome. Welcome to this service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation Grand Traverse. I'm Dave Newhouse. I'm a member of Sunday Services Committee and the Vocal Ensemble. Welcome to those of you who are joining us online as well as those here in our sanctuary. If you're visiting or if you're new to the congregation, if you're willing, would you please stand and introduce yourself, and someone will bring a microphone to you to ensure that we all hear your voice. Nobody knew. Sorry about that. Anyway, join us in the social hour afterwards. Sharing our joys and concerns with our beloved community helps us stay connected, both in moments of celebration and in times calling for compassionate support. For those of you in the sanctuary, the book recording your cares and concerns is over here on this side. You can light a candle anytime through the century music, and then Dan will read your joys and concerns later in the service. As we start this service this morning, I invite you to set aside distractions of daily life. Please turn your phasers to stunned, so we might bring our full attention to this time together. And the Reverend Nathan Ryan gives us these words: whatever you are carrying, leave it behind. Come into this place with open hearts. Come into this place with a soul that has remembered how to be tender again. Our centering music today is performed by Margie Hunter.
Good morning. You see that today's service is on science and religion, which is kind of a broad topic and somewhat new and from what we're doing. So bear with us here. It's been an interesting experiment putting together this service, and I appreciate Dave's patience with my organizational skills. I want to start by talking about the origin of life. I learned years ago that among accomplished scientists, there are many who are devout theists, or deists, I don't know which, who fully understand all the physics and biology that Carl Sagan and Stephen Hawking and the others come up with. But still, the deists will point to the Big Bang as irrefutable evidence of a creator. And they point to DNA as irrefutable evidence of intelligent design. They believe that that DNA code is just too complex to have occurred by chance. And even the simplest bacteria has over 5,000 different kinds of DNA inside. But on the other hand, we've got scientists that say that after we had the Big Bang, everything else is just physics. I work occasionally with a brilliant analytical chemist who was raised devoutly Jewish, but he's less so now. He understands the arguments of Spinoza that nature and God are the same and that God does not intervene in the affairs of the world. But my friend contends that once you have amino acids in a mix, everything else is chemistry. All of evolution is just chemistry. And time, of course. The question of intelligent design is fascinating, but that's going to wait for a future service. I just wanted to bring it up. In that same spirit, though, I want to start thinking about the world 1,000 million years ago, 1,000 million years after the Earth was formed. Excuse me, 1,000 million, that's a billion, but 1,000 million sounds bigger. The land was barren, but the sea was teeming with single-cell bacteria of countless different species of bacteria, some living on energy from light, some taking chemicals from the sea or from the rocks, some devouring other bacteria. There was also an abundance of free-floating RNA and DNA from other bacteria or that gets excreted, but that could be picked up by any passing bacteria and either metabolized or retained in the genome. In devouring other bacteria, some proteins or genes might not be metabolized, but would remain within the host and become part of its genome, for good or ill. Accumulated genes became chromosomes in some cells. Bacteria could reproduce mitotically by simply doubling its chromosomes and splitting into two identical individuals. Sometimes an ingested bacteria was not dissolved at all, but thrived within the cytoplasm of the host and adjusted and became tiny organelles that reproduce independently of the cell and accompany each new cell. This is how cells acquired mitochondria and became dependent on oxygen. That's also how some bacteria or some Protoctus acquired cyanobacteria and became plants. You could metabolize the light and the carbon dioxide. Anyway, these cells continue to acquire genetic material, and eventually some encase their chromosomes in a nucleus for protection. These nucleated cells are called Protoctus. Thank you for bearing with me till I got to the Protoctus. Some of these develop meiotic reproduction, where the cells would split into two with half the DNA in one half and half of the other, and off they go into the ocean, and somebody might pick it up. This was what eventually evolved into sexual reproduction. It's a means to allow DNA from different individuals to join. Now, we know this is what happened, or we think this is what happened, because we can still observe it today. You go to any salt marsh, go to any tidal pool, take a sample, and you'll see these little creatures in there, still the very basic creatures, and you can observe them and see what I just described. Some of these Protoctus reproduce in sexual and asexual ways with any other Protoctus that they encounter, or they might just eat it. You can sit and watch this. In the ancient ocean, some Protoctus developed into fungi. Some required the cyanobacteria and used to burn CO2, and they became plants, as I said. Others developed nervous systems and brains and became animals. But all life forms retained fundamental chemical and genetic memory from the earliest ancestors, including their basic metabolism, the use of symbiotic relationships with other life forms, and use a variety of ways to eat and reproduce. These are the most fundamental, most persistent forces of life. There is one other force of nature, besides this one, which first occurred in bacteria when they formed films for protection. And this is shared by all species, fungi, animals, plants, and that is to cooperate with and to vigorously protect others of the same species, and to help or eat every other species, depending on what they might do for us. We can also seek to learn from these other species. So let's begin.
We begin the service by lighting the chalice. Mindful of the precious promise of a new day, we gather again to recommit ourselves to the task of mending, to tying together those tender strands that connect us to each other, to the world, and those parts of ourselves that are buried deep. Within this work of renewal, hope lies in wait. So come, friends, let us begin.
Would you please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 1065, Alabanza. This is a hymn written by a Puerto Rican judge and lay minister. We will be singing the 2 verses in English, however, as my Puerto Rican is non-existent. We will be singing about the Dunde flower and the cucuy, which is an amphibian native to Puerto Rico. And if you've ever been to Puerto Rico, has anyone been to Puerto Rico? I think it's a backdrop of sound in that area of the world. As the rain is falling, the forest is reborn. All the fields are verdant, creation is renewed. Look at the red lily, the Tunde now has bloomed. Beautiful the springtime, the brilliance showing forth. Now all of the wildflowers are singing new songs of love. All manifest surely the glory of our God. Now all of the wildflowers are singing new songs of love. All manifest surely the glory of our God. The gopi is cheerful and filled with joy is he. All he sings the praises, cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. Mockingbird is chirping, as is the nightingale, sounding joyful anthems, a symphony of praise. How all of creation reflects the glory of God. All manifest surely the glory of our God. Go in joy, go in peace to meet the day. With open hearts embrace life's wonder. We will love you, we will guide you on your way.
Giving brings our mission to life. It touches those within our walls and reaches out beyond. And our mission, grounded in love, we protect the web of life by building beloved community here and in the wider world, making good trouble, pursuing social justice and liberation, embodying radical love, welcoming those at the margins, engaging in lifelong learning, seeking faith and discovery. So we give in love, knowing that our contributions are used mindfully. The baskets you'll see have two sides. The red side is for community needs, and the blue side sustains this congregation. There are other ways in which you can support this congregation. You can mail a check to 6726 Center Road. You can give via the UUCGT website or the Venmo app. If you look on the back of your order of service, there's a little QR code. You can give through the Vanco mobile app, or you can make arrangements with your bank to make monthly or regular transfers to the UUCGT account. So you can designate your gift as you choose, for the congregation, for those in need, or to fulfill your annual pledge. So now we'll have the offering, and Anne-Marie and Margie will accompany this.
are so blessed. Thank you. This is the time in our service where we read what's been offered up to us, personal moments in the lives of the members of our congregation. This morning we have a note from Dave and Mary Newhouse. They ask your loving support for their son Craig and his wife Melody as they observe what would have been Tanner's 18th birthday. Their house is too quiet. Rick and Chris Walter ask for healing thoughts and support for Sitka, Alaska brother-in-law Larry, recovering from an infected knee replacement in Seattle, Washington. We'll be visiting this family in Sitka next week. Safe travels. We know that there are other thoughts that we're holding that may be too personal to share. We'll take a moment of silence to think about that. And then, somewhat out of your service, out of the order of service, I'll have a few more comments to lead in the sermon. Ooh. No fire alarms, no smoke alarms. Whoa, Anne-Marie. We'll take a moment of silence. The God of nature is immanent, meaning that nature's laws are pervasive, universal, and cannot be violated. But we know that some of them can be described. Devout theistic scientists have been driven by a passion to learn the secrets of nature, not for fame or personal gain, but to gain a glimpse of the divine. This search was made possible because the Hebrew faith of one God who is omnipotent and who's created man in his image with a plan that was perfect. Other belief systems had multiple gods that were jealous or warring, and animus held beliefs in magical beings that were good or mischievous or evil, but there was no hope of thinking of a single plan that could be discovered. However, to many scientists, the immanent God of the Bible and nature is not also the transcendent God of the Bible, the God who transcends nature's laws and performs miracles and who meddles in the affairs of man, such as choosing kings and popes. But this is also the God who cares about individuals and who will listen to anyone. God is someone we can turn to in prayer for strength and serenity, to ask for grace or forgiveness, to give thanks or praise, or to receive enlightenment. The one God of Abraham and Moses opened the door to scientific inquiry and reason. But the ancient chroniclers of the Bible had already created a God who had made the world in a very specific way. He had laid down very specific rules, and he regularly interfered in worldly affairs. These beliefs became difficult to sustain as nature's laws were revealed, perhaps first in regard to the rotation of the earth around the sun, then when rocks could be dated and extended the date of creation from 6,000 years to something much longer, and limiting the need for the great flood of Noah, which had been used just to explain where these fossils come from. And certainly then there was the notion the church had to get rid of that all species are right now as they were created and permanent. Religions needed to reform and to interpret Scripture not as literal but rather as metaphoric or apocryphal, or else religions would become obsolete and become myths. Some of nature's truths that conflict with religion have not yet been addressed by the church, as we will see in a few minutes. So let's look a little deeper today and see if we can help religions renew themselves. Come, let's worship together.
Please join me in singing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life,
today I get to head off a scientific doubleheader for you, so okay. So we looked at the Soul Matters small group package, and the theme this month is renewal. Well, what is renewal? Well, they give us about 18 definitions of renewal. Now, if you've ever ridden with Mary and me, you know that when I'm driving, I would like directions, not options. They give us options. So, today, you see the pretty green on the upper left there, we're going to focus on nature. And you can deal with all those other options another time. So, way back when I was doing my research, I came upon an oak shoot sprouting from the stump of a clear-cut tree. It was only 18 inches tall, but it had acorns. Now, you only ever see acorns on 20-plus-year-old oak trees. So how did this happen? Well, this was renewal. Drawing on the energy and maturity of the oak's root system to produce fruit on a tiny regrowth. In the same way, we draw energy from this congregation's history, from our resources and support, and the sharing we do with each other to bring new joy into this world and community. This is a symbol that we're going to see throughout of the sharing and the communication. In addition to oaks, aspen trees also renew themselves and their community, and they talk to each other through interconnecting underground fungal mycelia and roots, and they send up new sprouts in advance of a disturbance, or especially responding afterward. As a result, stands of aspens regenerating after fire or clear cut are often dog hair thick, tens of thousands of stems per acre. You can't walk through it. So we too nurture young people to be thinking adults, ready to replace our older generation in supporting and perpetuating this congregation and its wider mission. Now, you may have also noticed fewer paper birch trees in our local forests. These early successional trees age out, they falter, and they're replaced by longer-lived species. But the birch stands can regenerate after fast-moving fires, because forest fire ash is dark. It melts snow early, and it provides nourishing minerals, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, to young birch seedlings. Birch's strategy for renewal is to cast millions of seeds late fall into winter so that they can be blown great distances, especially on snow, and then they germinate. And just so, we are challenged to try many different activities, events, and programs to reach fertile spiritual ground in the people in our community, renewing their hope as well as our own. By contrast, maple trees are late successional, trees of mature, older, sometimes ancient forest. They're winged chimeras, you've seen them, helicopter to earth, and it's inspired scientists like Leonardo da Vinci to create flying machines. Patiently, maple seedlings await openings in the forest canopy caused by lightning or wind throw to thrust upward and grow toward the light. And just as patiently, we allow you to be you and me to be me in our interactions, forming and renewing friendships and commitments. Now, in the animal kingdom, or flipping over plants and animals, just among plants, populations renew themselves in the face of environmental adversity and predation, or in the face of prosperity, he said slowly, by selecting and sharing breeding strategies that help their offspring survive. Now, female animals, remember that female animals make highly strategic decisions about their own reproduction based on the ecological or social environment, their condition, and the quality of their mate. Take note, guys, the quality of their mate. In a highly adaptive evolutionary strategy, females somehow can pick the sperm that will produce the babies that will serve their interests best, and eventually produce more grandchildren. What makes grandmothers happy? healthy, well-fed grandchildren to grow and renew their families. So, similarly, when lemmings or wolves or goshawks are faced with food shortages, they produce fewer offspring. They have more babies when times are good, and there's plenty of food for everybody. So, how do animals spread the word about which strategy is in play? Well, imagine a gathering of furry little influencer mom lemmings on the tundra. The leader says, "Look, girls, times are tough. There are way too many of us, and we're eating ourselves out of house and home. As I see it, we have two choices. It's the cliff or fewer babies. Now, we gotta clue the guys in. If any of us are gonna make it at all, tell them, if Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody gonna be happy." But the answer comes back, how do we get the word around with no newspaper or email? We make scents, girls, pheromones. We know that perfume works. This is just a special essence. If we can lure the guys in, we can shut the girls down. So, when times get better, we can have more babies. So, go forth and waft, waft. Now, none of this is in the Bible, or even with all those knowings and begattings, and we shouldn't expect it there, but science tells us this is all true, or at least it's based on pretty good, repeatable scientific evidence. So clearly, trees, fungal mycelia, and animals all communicate and cooperate with each other about important survival strategies and how to renew themselves. They don't have to depend on a human Dr. Dolittle to doctor the animals, nor do they have to depend on stodgy politicians with their shorts in a bundle over people managing their own bodies, telling them what to do. So you can stake your renewal faith on that.
Thank you, Dave. It's been exciting to watch the emergence of this idea of intelligence in plants. There's been some serious debates that I've been watching and enjoying on what is intelligence? What is it? When we see a plant able to do what Dave just described, is that intelligence? They don't have a brain, so now we have to rethink. There's mysteries, many mysteries we just don't know. In my personal investigations into the history of science and religion, I learned that what I was taught in the 1960s was wrong. There's not an inherent conflict between the two fields of study or fields of interest. In fact, the conflicts are actually very rare, and most of the revelatory scientific investigations, such as by Isaac Newton, were motivated by a profound curiosity of wanting to get inside God's brain, essentially, to get a clue as to the mind of God. Many early natural philosophers, they weren't called scientists, but natural philosophers were members of the clergy or deeply religious faculties at universities. Isaac Newton's advances were seen more as explaining the perfection and the beauty of God's plans, and they were not a threat to established religions. However, sometimes these revelatory discoveries conflicted with the explanations in the Bible, and sometimes it took a while for the church to come around. I mentioned a few earlier, most famously the rotation of the planets. And eventually, the theologians realized they needed to interpret Scripture more as metaphor or apocryphal stories rather than literal stories. This interpretation became increasingly necessary as improved optics revealed that microbes were causing diseases. Anatomists showed that the human body was remarkably beast-like, not divine. And then Darwin showed, of course, that species were not as fixed as Moses had told us they were. No one argues now that Homo sapiens were created from dust or that they descended from fallen angels. But several points remain where science does not support religious practice or belief. And I'll start listing just mentioning a few. Intense search and experiments have found no evidence of race-related differences in intelligence or moral behavior. And there are no caste systems that are based truly on capability. It's been hard for many Christian churches to truly renew themselves and act like they believe this, even though Jesus tried to teach it to us. Some say the soul is eternal and passes from life to heaven. Others say that the soul can pass from life to life. Others believes that their soul is ephemeral and that their matter and energy will rejoin the cosmos when they die. When the Catholic Church set out rules for entering the kingdom of heaven, the opportunities for favors were hard to resist. The Church reformed this a little bit by ceasing to sell indulgences, but still, selling salvation remains far too popular, and it's getting worse recently with the prosperity gospel and the orange Jesus. Another point of disagreement concerns when a human life begins. Some religions tell us that human life begins at conception. Others say it begins when a child is born. Some say it doesn't really begin until the child is baptized. Science can help us with this question, however, because scientists study life regularly and in many species in all branches of life. It's simple. Life begins for an organism when it's born. There are no other points. Any other point is a matter of religious or personal belief. This one's easy for science. However, the concern really for some religions is actually when does the divine spirit or soul enter the body? Again, some insist it occurs at conception, which I deeply hope is not true, because nature rejects a great many fetuses and embryos and babies. They just don't work. And nature recognizes this. Even after they're born, some are rejected. And for some of them to have been given a soul would be unspeakably cruel for any compassionate God. Science cannot help us here, but the Church could review the basis of their need to deny so many women the dignity of control of this very central essence of their being. One final thing science has shown us is that reproduction is very complicated and diverse, and that includes gender and related behaviors of attraction and identity. Science proves that humans evolved, as all beings did, from Protactus, perhaps with guidance from divinity, perhaps not. No one argues that women were created from a man's rib, but that hierarchy of male and female roles clearly remains rigid in many established faiths. Science certainly confirms that genders tend to have different physical characteristics and look at the world in a different way, but it's hard to draw clear cut points between genders on any measurable features, including anatomy, and there are no traits that are exclusive to any one gender. Many plant species are capable of acting as both male and female at different times or places on plants that normally do not switch. When stressed, many species of plants, insects, and reptiles will reproduce asexually. Animal behavior specialists know that virtually every species of animal, mammals, reptiles, insects, and birds, every species that's been observed and where male and female mating and partnering behaviors have been described, these studies show consistently that mating behavior and partnering behavior is not strictly binary, occurs in significant portions of individuals, as well as a consistent portion, around 30% when times are good, that do not breed, even if they engage in mating behavior. Several species of female lizards and fruit flies can reproduce asexually, yielding only females, but the offspring are fertile. Bird watchers observe many species that engage in different kinds of male-female pairings, I assume. And when you scold your dog for humping your guest's leg, doesn't he look kind of confused? These behaviors are natural. Observers note that with the exception of Homo sapiens, non-binary behavior is not shunned in any species observed, although in herds, same-sex groups often wish to stay distant from families for social reasons. Interestingly, a different form of sexual reproduction evolved separately in fungi, involving exchanges of genes, sometimes with plants, creating whole new hybrid organisms. The life force for diversity in attraction and reproduction goes very deep indeed. As said in the most famous line in the movie Jurassic Park, life finds a way. We know now that no genes for queer behavior have been identified, despite intense investigation. The trait is not passed from parents through the classic chromosomal model that allows us to identify genetic traits. The best theory then is that the various genes for diverse behaviors are in the cytoplasmic DNA, where they were in the Bacterium protoctus. That the DNA of the sperm and the egg, some cells have some of these characteristics, some don't. Some genes get activated, some don't, but these genes are in all of us. It's clearly a part of nature's plan that has survived the gauntlet of natural selection from the single-cell beasties 33,000 million years ago. We all carry these genes for a spectrum of gender and reproductive behavior. Dave showed us nature's model for renewal, a recognition of a need or an opportunity, and then with different species cooperating to nourish the new growth, sometimes doing the unexpected, and when the unexpected works, nature remembers. Maybe we're seeing the beginnings of renewal on the horizon in the church on these issues I just talked about, with the Pope now allowing prayers for same-sex marriages and a wider acceptance of ordained gay clergy in other congregations. One possible path that I see for reaching harmony between our religious beliefs and our understanding of nature is to return to this concept of the eminent and transcendent God. We can study the eminent God by studying nature. And through the knowledge we gain, we can do things never dreamed of by our ancestors. We can control electricity, feed far more people, prevent disease with sanitation, and cure crippling conditions by means that could only be seen as miracles only a few years ago. Now we can see beyond those barriers of ignorance and tradition on gender roles that keep us from welcoming all members of our species into our community in all their beauty. Therefore, isn't it possible that the emergence of this knowledge from the study of nature is the transcendence that religions have been praying for and promising for generations? It is true, just as our UU faith tells us, and all religions should agree. We can know the eminence of God through the study of nature, but we can be the transcendence of God through our actions. Let's have a moment of stillness.
Would you please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 351, A Long, Long Way the Sea Winds Blow.
In the Soul Matters packet, there is a poem, Beginners, by Denise Levertov. But we have only begun to love the earth. We have only begun to imagine the fullness of life. How could we tire of hope? So much is in bud. How can desire fail? We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Only begun to envision how it might be to live as siblings with beast and flower, not as oppressors. We have only begun to know the power that is in us if we would join our solitudes in the communion of struggle. So much is unfolding that must complete its gesture. So much is in bud. We release the flame, letting it linger in our hearts and spread throughout our world.
I have a few announcements. So, join Reverend Alex and others for a heart-centered conversation on Palestine and Israel this Wednesday, June 12th, 5:30 to 7 in the sanctuary. This is not a space for debate or argument. Rather, it's a chance for us to share our wounds and our hurts around this sensitive issue. This conversation will run concurrently with Monday night potluck in the social hall, but this was the only time that was available for us to facilitate. Reach out to Reverend Alex if you have any questions. Again, Wednesday at 5:30. With our new and inspiring mission statement, it's not too late to help set goals for our congregation for the upcoming year. The board will be using these goals to create a strategic plan for living into our new mission statement. Check out the vision binders in the social hall over here and read the inspired words of fellow members and friends with their hopes for our community. Barb Colton and Susan Leo will be standing near the SMART goal posters in the social hall and can help you setting a goal. I appreciate very much if you would do that. The board is meeting in a few weeks and we're going to start trying to set our strategic plan for next year to carry forward our mission and covenant statements. That's all I have. Please join us in the social hall. Thank you. Dave? Thank you, Dave. Whatever I forgot.
It said closing words, so I ought to do that. Okay. And if you are interested in the potluck, do talk to Christine. You need to see who's all coming. So we have these closing words. Assumptions, sometimes unconsciously made in previous eras, are being challenged and rethought. New words of truth and love, new memorable phrases, new encouragements are in order. Contemporary voices revere both love and truth and find ways in worship of moving out of familiar into new territory. Grounded in science and fact, our beliefs are empowering as any tales that were told at the mouths of caves or in the vaulting cathedrals. So go now, sharing these truths in peace, in faith, in love. Join us in the social hall, and let's live this faith, and let's renew life around us. Thank you.